Good morning, everybody. I wanted to start you off kind of in a similar place as we did yesterday by looking at the last 7 days of total accumulated precipitation. This allows us to really see the evolution of that low, which began midweek last week and took all the way into the weekend to get down to Florida before racing up the East Coast on Sunday into Monday. And what we can now see here is the true extent of the rainfall. And you've probably seen a lot of the videos of the flooding that happened here in parts of South Carolina 2 days ago. And then you can see from yesterday the tremendous amount of rainfall that hit parts of New England. Now, this system, as it did roll through, did really put down some much needed precipitation in a lot of areas. I'm thinking about the southern plains here, and we actually did have some drought issues going up the East Coast. Now, we don't like to break a drought with 4 to 5 to 6 inches of rain, in some places up to 10, but that's unfortunately seems to be the way the atmosphere does that. Now, if you look around the rest of the country, we've got places that need it. I'm talking about parts of the northern plains, the Canadian prairie, the southwestern United States. And the low that came through California that delivered some of the rainfall in the last 2 days here, well, there's a secondary one following it, another low, another coastal low that's going to sneak down here into Southern California, come out into Arizona, and this will eventually be a system that we're going to watch here in the southern plains early next week around Christmas. But behind the deep low that left, we did put high pressure in its place. You can see this lot of very light winds, clear skies, calm conditions under, high pressure, in which you end up getting some pretty cold temperatures. So as I was recording here just a little after 6 a.m. Central Time this morning, you can see the temperatures really bottomed out here under those conditions. And after dealing with a lot of just very strong winds, intense snow squalls yesterday in this area in the backside of the low, we've now seen the temperatures really just kind of plummet here on that slightly northwest flow that then died out overnight. So temperatures really bottomed out here. I want to show you a little bit different perspective on the kind of the behavior of the atmosphere here by looking at a water vapor image. So I look at these every day. I often don't show them to you, but I just want to make a point here today. All right, so you can kind of pick out the flow, right? So it's doing something like this. And you hear me often talk about a northwest flow. I harp on it because there's only one time of year that northwest flow produces good rain, and that's in summer. But northwest flow in summer is different because it's not controlled by the jet stream. It's actually northwest flow around like a ridge. So you get little wiggles in the flow that produce storms that come around the edge. That's what we call those ridge riders. We're not in that season. We are in the time of year where northwest flow means that there's a ridge and the jet stream dives. Now, as the jet stream comes out of the northwest like this, what I want you to see is where does the moisture go? So can I play this for you? Just watch. I want you to watch the flow that comes all the way down to the base of this trough. So when you look at this, the brighter colors here represent more moisture in the upper atmosphere, and this represents very dry colors. Drier air. So do you notice as I go back, let's go forward. Just watch right here. Come off, this part of the Dakotas into Minnesota and Iowa. Watch that area. Now the moisture's coming through, but it doesn't make it. Do you notice that? It kind of fades out. And that's because I keep harping on this, but there's upper level convergence. I'm writing a C on this. That gives us sinking motion in the atmosphere right there. And sinking motion promotes compressional warming, although it's not hot, it's just warming, which promotes evaporation, which kind of ruins the flow. And where this happens, I wish you could see this in 3D. It's like coming off of the top of a roller coaster ride and then down into the bottom. So all of that is always found at the very bottom here of the trough. Now, usually when you come out of the trough, and you start to make your turn to the north, now there are several reasons for this. We're not going to dig into all of them today, but you start to get lift again in the atmosphere. It's primarily through the advection of vorticity, or the movement of vorticity. So that is why I'm always going on and on about southwest flow. You get southwest flow, turn this whole thing around, and you pull the moisture, you pull the vorticity through, the air lifts, you get convergence aloft, but divergence aloft. It creates a column of low pressure, and then it goes. It makes a big storm system. So I go on and on about all of that just to make this point that we have seen a lot of northwest flow coming out of the Canadian prairie and the northern plains for a while, and that's been one of the big reasons why this area has been drier. Okay, so with all of that said, I want to show you another factor to this pattern. You saw that coming over the mountains, like look right in through here on the spine of the Rocky Mountains in Colorado, just early this morning here. you can see the flows coming right over the top of them. And you end up getting these really awesome clouds. They tend to form in standing waves. We sometimes call them lenticular clouds. Sometimes you can get what we call a chinook coming off the top of this as well. But the other consequences, you get downslope flow on the surface. So I was just showing you a map deep in the atmosphere. This is at the surface. And today's high temperatures are reflecting that compressional warming component happening in the low levels of the atmosphere. Okay, so notice that right along the Rocky Mountains, we're looking at temperatures here that are going to be 25 to 30 degrees above average. And at the base of that trough, where the clear skies were last night, everything bottomed out, but the temperatures were much colder today on the backside. But this warmth is going to spread from Tuesday into Wednesday, farther into the plains. Here we go on Thursday, still more downslope flow here on Thursday, getting into Friday. Your weekend starts with Saturday just being very, very warm. Iowa, parts of North and South Dakota, Minnesota. I mean, we're going to be in the 50s here. And again, 52 in Sioux Falls and 52 in Raleigh. What an interesting pattern to see going across the country. We then get into Sunday, and then here's Christmas Day. So very mild one. But when you see this map now, do you notice how we've replaced what was very hot air here with cooler air? And what's happening on Monday is that instead of the flow coming over the top of the mountains like it's going to be doing all week, we're starting to see that system I mentioned come out right into this area, and there's upper level divergence aloft, which makes a low at the surface, which begins to pull the air around like this. And now what you end up getting is flow out of the east. We call that upslope flow for those of you that don't live along the mountains here. And that's going to be the setup for right in this area to be delivering some Christmas Day snow. So this is the pattern we're going to be watching evolve through the rest of at least most of these tabs. Okay, so what do we have this morning? 6:10. We still have the winter weather advisories, winter storm warnings that are still out early this morning. Again, those snow squalls still pulling through here into the Appalachian Mountains. All of these polygons here throughout the East Coast are still flood warnings. This is where we still have flood warnings right now. In the West, some stronger winds, flood watches down here to Southern California. These are winter weather advisories. If we just take a look at some of the high-res modeling we've got this morning, let's play this out through the day today. So this is through early this afternoon. Okay, so watch it again. But this morning through early this afternoon, playing into this evening in the overnight hours. And again, here's the low we're watching slide right along the West Coast. So getting out there to Wednesday evening, playing into early Thursday morning, and now we get in here into Thursday midnight. Now, did you notice that? Now watch this again. Can you keep an eye right here? I'll take you back. The flow initially coming out of the northwest. Where does it end up coming out of? Southwest. See that? Can you almost see it gathering, ready to make a storm system? Now, it's got to wait on this, and there's a kicker coming way out of the Pacific Ocean that's going to really light up the central part of the United States with this system. And I want to show you what this is going to look like, because this is kind of fascinating. So we're kind of going here to the top-down view on the North Pole. We're looking at jet stream level winds. And as I play this out, we know we have a few components to this low we're watching. So what we're doing is here's that low by Thursday, which is going to be the December solstice, by the way. Here, look at the subtropical jet going underneath it. Here's the Pacific jet extension. Now, the rest of the flow around North America is weak until these three components start to get to interact here. So here we are on Saturday, December 23rd, getting into the 24th. Now, can you see it? The streamlines kind of show you where the wind's going. It's doing that, with really strong winds in the subtropical jet here, and then here's the other piece. Look at that jet extension. That's what we were talking about for, I don't know, it feels like 2 or 3 weeks. So this is going to initiate a storm system right here coming off the Rocky Mountains, using the mountains actually to generate some cyclonic vorticity in the atmosphere. And as we get out there to the 26th, on the southern side of it, the speed in this jet is going to help this low develop. Now behind it, look at that wave coming, not a wave, that's almost zonal flow coming all the way from China clear to the United States. And as we play this forward, this is starting on Christmas night, and then we get into the couple of days following Christmas, and this is how things shape up for the end of the month. Now, I was noticing something quite impressive. Let's stop it on December 30th. The jet stream starts in the Sahara, comes all the way through Asia after going through parts of southern Europe, and then gets out here in Japan and finishes. It almost stops when it hits Mexico, but then it continues. And you could even make an argument that there's a split here, but it connects right back over again. So we right now have mostly a subtropical piece of the jet stream that circumnavigates the planet. So we're roughly at 22 to 20, almost 24,000 miles around. Isn't that amazing? I just love to see that. So you can imagine what this is going to do to the West Coast. We have to have a talk about that, because if you watch this 1 week sliding window of average precipitation anomalies, first of all, the low comes down, subtropical jet goes under, the system rolls out here. By the time we get into the 24th, 25th, it emerges, open up the Gulf, we have a system here. East Coast gets a break while that happens. The Northwest is out of the flow, so they're not in the strong flow, so we just don't have a lot going on there. But this is a 1 week sliding window. So as I play this forward, let's just stop this at days 4 through 10. That gets us out to the 29th of December. And then beyond that, this is going to head to the East Coast. It's going to be a pretty potent system up the East Coast, and then watch the end of this animation. That's where the extended jet gets into California. I told you it'd be the end of this month before we'd see it, and this is where the risk of that heavy rain comes from. The Climate Prediction Center has been watching this carefully, suggesting that from the 26th to the 1st, we're looking at not just a slight but moderate risk here of having extremely heavy rain. And I'll show you the system that's expected, the pair of systems that are expected to go up the East Coast to deliver the risk of heavy rain once again here after Christmas. So again, more flooding and the heavy rains arriving in California. The other part of this is with that nose of that jet coming into the west, there is the risk of very strong winds in California. So we need to be paying close attention to that as we get out there again past Christmas toward the 1st. Okay, so how about some multi-model analysis? By the way, if you've been looking at my website this morning, ag-wx.com, I apologize. I had a server reset last night, right when the 0Z runs were going. So I restarted them this morning when I got up. That's why I'm a little delayed this morning. It should all be back and perfectly functioning today. I've checked the machine and it's all good. So we've already watched through Wednesday into Thursday. Now here's the low we're questioning. So there's one, the subtropical jets coming underneath it. So we're already starting to see in the southern plains by Thursday evening the next chance of some showers, maybe some thunderstorms. But as we noticed, by the time we get into Friday and Saturday, watch the system gather in the southwest and then pull right into the central U.S. That is going to be, again, from Friday night into Saturday and Sunday. Now you start to notice here that as we work our way into early Christmas morning, there's some heavy snow on the backside of this. And that snow came through parts of the Pacific Northwest on Friday. So see this? That's that little push coming through the Northwest that's going to add to this system. Now, what we also have to keep an eye on as this system opens up here on Christmas Eve and then pushes through on Christmas Day. So it's going to be a bit of a wet one across this area on Christmas Day, early morning here. Wet down in the southeast. It's in both models. Watch what's coming behind it right here. It's in both models. Because as I play past Christmas, see it coming across Mexico now to Texas, and then get you out there to the 26th, 27th, 28th. That is, so it's amazing. There's a low here that's a part of this trough. Here comes a subtropical jet underneath it. So again, I can kind of draw it on both maps, and it just hits the East Coast hard right there. So on the 26th, 27th, 28th. Look at that. That's a big system in both models rolling up the East Coast, and that's the risk for the flooding to continue in this area. So that's, to be honest, very good model agreement between the GFS and the Euro on the timing, size, extent. I mean, I like this. This is going to be our main story as we kind of wrap up these forecast videos for this year. What's happening through about Tuesday the 28th. So if we add up total precipitation, let's just compare some models here. This is the GFS, that's the European. This is the GFS. We're seeing a pretty similar scenario overall, although you can tell there's a little bit of difference in where the placement of the precip is. So let's go ahead and look at the ensemble average just to kind of get an idea. Best chance of getting an inch over the next 10 days. Now you can start to see the evolution of that system. And man, does this look good. We need this moisture down here in Arizona, one of the driest spots this fall for the whole country. But as that system emerges, we've now opened up a larger corridor in through here of heavier precipitation. Let's go ahead and step this up a little bit more. What about the probability of 2 inches? Sorry, we did get a new model run. It's one of the consequences I have when I record just a little later than normal. And that's the probability of 2 inches. Look at California. And let's go ahead and step this up to 4. That's still our hot spot for the wettest conditions. On the drier side of this, Canadian Prairie, still northwest flow. Parts of Montana, northern plains missing out on this as well. So why this is so important, just to get back to this idea of who's getting this moisture, look at where this is going to be hitting. This is going to be hitting that same corridor that has been so very dry. This is root zone soil moisture down 1 meter, 100 centimeters, about 40 inches. We still have a problem in through this area that needs to be corrected before the soils freeze north and before we kind of get into the heart of winter, which is a drier season for most of us. Right now, the Mississippi River is at 4.22 feet below low stage. A year ago at this point, it had already recovered to 10 feet above low stage. So this has been one of the slowest recoveries I've seen in fall in a long time. So what about the snow side of this? I kept mentioning it. Let's play this out on the European model and just go all the way out there 1 week. So we're going to pause it right here. This is through 6 p.m. on Christmas Day. So we saw the system rolling out of Arizona. So the snow will be in the Rocky Mountains here, and then will show up in parts of the plains. So Nebraska, parts of South Dakota, Wyoming, the Front Range of the Rockies. Yeah, we're looking at a better chance of getting some snow. Now, why doesn't this produce a lot in the Sierra Nevada? It's too mild. We just don't have the strong onshore flow with brutally cold air in place. So there's snow here in the Sierra, but it's not going to be adding up significantly. If we add this if we add to this the GFS. Now, if you're a snow lover and you're in the western high plains, the GFS has got everything you want. The 6Z run came in just pounding away with the snow here in parts of Nebraska and South Dakota. We're going to have to watch it. This is just one model run, but we'll keep a close eye on this. How about some probability maps? This makes a bit more sense. This is who through Christmas has the best chance at getting an inch of snow. All right. Pretty amazing to see a donut hole right here where we've got northwest flow continuing, keeping this area drier. So best chance is going to be from that system early next week. And right here is where we see the highest probabilities of getting at least an inch. Let's step it up. This would be the chance. Darn it, new model run. Need to get my butt up earlier, I guess. Even though I was up early this morning, it was just the models were broken. Anyways, this is the chance of 3 inches, and there's 6. So we kind of get an idea on that. Okay, I want to make a story for you about week 2 and beyond, because this is what the forecast looks like for week 2. All three of our major models, so the CPC, not a model, but the group, plus the European, plus the GFS, are painting this time period where after the Christmas Day system that then it gets to the East Coast, central part of the United States takes a break, extended jet hits California. That's a pretty solid story. What I'm thinking about is what happens beyond that, because I have complained for weeks about this trough, because I went back to mid-November, and that's when it kind of really got established. And that trough has left high pressure at times right here. So what do you end up getting out of this? Well, you can kind of follow the flow coming over the top, right? So that's what it does. It goes south to troughs. It goes over ridges. In fact, it likes to make the turn around these ridges and kind of come around like this. And there it is. There's your northwest flow. If you want to look at it compared to average, there's your donut sitting there right where that high pressure is, which is going to continue in the near term. But this is what I'm watching carefully. I've told you, El Nino background, watch Alaska, MJO is going to influence it. The MJO spent a long time in phase 7, and now it's popping out pretty high amplitude over in phase 1. That's a reset. That's back over to Africa or out in the Central Pacific. There's kind of 2 parts to phase 1. Now, what's the significance of that? Well, phase 7, where it has been, gives us this. Does that look familiar? Troughing, subtropical jet, comes all the way across the bottom here. Big ridge. So we have really seen the MJO aligning with the pattern we've been experiencing. So then we ask ourselves, well, what happens if we transition into December, the end of December, with phase 1? We start to see a repositioning of this trough, a repositioning of this ridge. Now, I don't think we're going to get this exact flavor of flow, but right now we are still in something like this. Let me show you what I mean. If we look at the next 10 days, what do we have? The trough dips south. We get the subtropical component here, and there's a ridge. Now look, we are moving to MJO phase 1 right now. This is about 8, 9, 10 days from now, and it almost looks exactly like this. So you could really draw some strong correlations between where the MJO is over in the Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean. That's where it moves between and what's going on in our pattern. But the question is, can we get this ridge to retrograde a bit? And by the time we get to the beginning of the new year, what I'm talking about here is the ridge is trying to move its way in this direction. And that's going to change the whole pattern up. And what a lot of folks are paying close attention to is, what happens with these things? Now, this is the post-Christmas trough that just drives that big system up the East Coast. Again, 26, 27, 28, that time frame. But then we see what happens after this is being mostly driven by what goes on in Alaska. And if the MJO gets into phase 1 or even phase 2 in January, then it's game on. I've made a case for weeks that I think the middle part of January to the end of January is when winter finally gets its act together. And this is exactly what you want to see if you're a winter weather lover. Big ridge off the East Coast. I like it. Deep troughs occupying the southern Rocky Mountains. That brings in cold air, lots of cold air, and systems that roll through. Why do I like the high pressure up here in Nova Scotia? Because this will force systems to make the turn up the East Coast. Now, this is speculative, but if it verifies, it's going to be a fascinating, mid to late January time period for much of the United States. When I say fascinating, I mean possibly some bigger storm systems that roll through. We'll have to keep an eye on that. Now, this also means something for other parts of the world, which we do need to be discussing here. But before I do that, how about a quick recap of those temperatures? In the meantime, I don't want you to get too far ahead of me here. Your next 5 days, very mild. We've already seen this. Day 5 through 10 from the GFS ensemble goes off my color bar, so very mild in this area. But again, day 10 through 15, this is where some things begin to change. This is where we get into the beginning of the new year. Now, I want to be very clear on this. You see these maps and there's lots of red. This does not mean every day is just completely hot, okay, compared to average. We've got cooler shots of air coming in, but they're not linked up to Arctic air. It's also in the European ensemble. Just want to show you that. But I do want to make a point that the European ensemble, as we begin January, is pretty chilly down here in the southeast. But that's all subtropical jet stream dynamics. Okay, behind it, you're getting the colder air, but it's not linked to any Arctic air. The Arctic air, well, if we take a look at where the polar vortex is, it is disrupted. It's weakened. See, here's the average line. This is where it currently is. But it's sitting over Greenland right now. And that position of the polar vortex is largely because of the perturbation in that pressure field over Alaska, deep in the stratosphere. So long story short, if you look at the globe, what's changed? Well, remember how very, very cold Russia was at the beginning of the month? All that's gone. Look how hot it is here now compared to average. And the coldest air on the planet kind of lines up from China all the way through this part of Russia and also here in Greenland. That's where the cold air is locked up. It's going to move at some point, and when it does, that's when we'll start to get a bit of a pattern change. That's why I keep harping about Alaska. Alaska's kind of my test here on when the pattern's going to start to make its move. Now, other than that, let's talk about global precipitation. Europe continues to stay quite snowy and it's mild. So there's going to be some rain coming in here after some heavy snows. Elsewhere, much of Russia looking wetter. Look at South Africa, finally getting some desperately needed rainfall. The eastern side of Australia, that's very atypical of El Nino. But from Queensland to New South Wales, Victoria, very, very wet. And then take a look at South America. So let's finish up talking about South America here. Over the next 10 days, the European model has once again trended even wetter. This is the probability of getting 2 inches of rain in the next 10 days. And it is essentially trying to lay down heavy rain in the exact same location right here where it has been the driest. So I've shown you many, many times where all that really, really dry air is. In fact, I'm going to show you something here real quick. Let me just go to my, let's see here. I put this on my main desktop. This is how the first 16 days of December have started off. And we can see here that some of these sections here of, Mato Grosso, Goiás, Tocantins, Bahia, Minas Gerais, these areas, extremely dry. But look how wet it's been in Argentina as of late. So we look at this and just try to say that when I'm pointing out to you that we've got this really, really wet air, conditions coming in here, this is hitting that driest spot overall. So this will be critical to watch. Now, as you know, the GFS doesn't want it. The GFS is the drier of the models. It has been, and at times the GFS has been performing better. This would be incredible for the crop down there should it come through. This is going to be the kind of the last-ditch effort to save what has been some problem areas. Now, the early planted stuff, not going to help, but the mid to late planted stuff, this will help with in a big way. And after that, I want to show you just a couple other things here. I want to tell you that if the MJO does move into phase 1, this is at least consistent. Look down here at phase 1 with returning better rains into this area. That's what historically happens. So you say, what is MJO phase 1? That's when there's a lot of convection here and here and there. There's 3 spots. That's what that MJO phase 1 means, okay? But this also means we need to be talking a bit about Argentina because Argentina has actually lately seen some much better rains. I'm just going to pick a spot in Buenos Aires. So that's the province you see here. And if you take a look at this particular spot, look at these spring rains coming back in here. So taking them out of this long-standing drought, this goes back a full year, starting to see some improvement. Why don't we slide over toward Cordoba? I like this station right here called Pilar. If we click on it, again, look at the spring rains trying to return to break this long-standing drought issue. So we've had a few better rains getting over into parts of like Cordoba and surrounding areas. Let's step up here into kind of Santa Fe region. We'll just pick this spot. This is very near the Paraná River, but good, look at this. Now remember, that's 50 millimeters. That's 50 millimeters. That's 2 inches. We've had several of these rainfall events coming through this area. It's been quite wet, and even farther to the north, I'll just pick one up here. We've actually had some massive flooding rains. I mean, several events that have been over 4 inches, just breaking long-standing drought. So my point here is to tell you that Argentina has really made a pretty substantial recovery, although it's been with some pretty nasty spring severe weather. So we have to wait just to see if these rains manifest themselves as the models suggest, and we'll keep an eye on that, and I'll report to you again tomorrow. Hope you all have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk then. Thanks.